On a small, rocky world orbiting a quiet star, a young human named Aris lived with his family. The planet, called Kestra, was not Earth, but it was home. Humans had come here generations ago, fleeing a war they never fully understood. Now, they lived simply, farming the tough soil and mending their old machines. They were peaceful, or tried to be. Aris was different. He wasn't content to just tend the fields. He spent his days in the old workshop at the edge of the settlement, tinkering with broken parts from the colony ship that had brought his ancestors. His hands were always stained with grease, and his mind was always full of questions. Why did the ship's navigation core have so many unused ports? What was the purpose of the strange, smooth metal plates hidden in its walls? The other kids in the village thought he was odd. They called him Stargazer because he would often sit on the roof at night, looking up at the unfamiliar constellations, wondering what was out there. His parents worried. In their world, curiosity could be dangerous. The elders taught that the universe was vast and uncaring, and that humans were small and should stay hidden. One evening, as Aris was cleaning a piece of old circuitry, a deep, shuddering vibration ran through the ground. It wasn't an earthquake. It was too regular, too rhythmic. He dropped his tools and ran outside. Everyone was already there, standing in the central square, their faces pale with fear. High in the sky, blotting out the stars, was a ship dot. It was enormous, a city of black metal hanging in the air. It made no sound, but its presence was a physical weight, pressing down on them all. A single beam of light, soft and blue, lanced down from its belly and touched the ground at the edge of their fields. From within that light, figures emerged. They were tall and slender, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with a soft, internal light. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible, their long limbs flowing like water. They wore no armor, only simple flowing robes that shimmered with colors Aris had never seen before. They were the Velm, a species known across this part of the galaxy for their wisdom, their ancient civilization, and their absolute power. An elder from the Velm stepped forward. His voice, when he spoke, was not a sound in the air, but a thought that appeared directly in their minds. It was calm, gentle, and utterly terrifying. "We are the curators," the thought voice said. "We preserve the knowledge of 1,000,000 worlds. We have come for your history." The human elder, a woman named Marna, stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "We have no history worth your time, honored guests. We are simple farmers." The Veln elder tilted his head, a gesture that might have been curiosity or pity. "Every species has a story. We will take yours. Your memories, your records, your very genetic code. You will be preserved in our archives, a perfect record of your kind." Aris felt a cold dread in his stomach. This wasn't a visit. It was an erasure. They weren't being studied. They were being cataloged before being discarded. He remembered the stories his grandmother told of a great war where entire planets were wiped clean, their people turned into data points in a galactic library. The curators didn't destroy worlds with bombs. They destroyed them with kindness, by taking everything that made them alive and locking it away in a silent vault. "We will not give you our memories," Marna said, her voice firm now. The Veln elder's mental voice remained calm. "Your consent is not required. We are the curators. We decide what is worthy of preservation. Your world will be ours by dawn." With that, the figures stepped back into the beam of light and vanished. The great ship remained, a silent, ominous moon in their sky. Panic spread through the village. Some wanted to flee into the mountains. Others wanted to fight, though they had nothing but farming tools and old hunting rifles. Marna called for calm, but her eyes were filled with despair. She knew they had no chance. Aris didn't panic. He ran. He ran back to his workshop, his heart pounding in his chest. The elder's warnings echoed in his mind. Stay hidden. Be small. Don't attract attention. But he couldn't listen. If they were going to be erased, he would make sure their final act was not one of submission. He ignored the half-finished projects and went straight to the heart of the old colony ship's engine room. There, buried under layers of dust and grime, was the primary power coupling. It was a massive, archaic thing, designed to channel the energy of a dying star into the ship's systems for a journey that had ended centuries ago. It was also, Reese had discovered during his secret explorations, still partially active. A tiny trickle of power still flowed through its ancient veins. His plan was insane. He knew that. But it was the only plan he had. The Veln ship was a masterpiece of technology, 1 billion times more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. But it was also arrogant. It hung in the sky, defenseless, certain that these primitive humans posed no threat. Reese intended to prove them wrong. He worked through the night, his fingers flying over the controls, rerouting power conduits, bypassing safety protocols that hadn't been touched in 200 years. He was building a bomb, not of explosives, but of raw, unfiltered energy. He would overload the power coupling and send a feedback surge through the ship's main transmitter, the same one that was probably being used to scan their minds and their world. He wouldn't destroy the Veln ship, but he might just give it a shock. It would never forget that. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Reese finished his work. He stood at the console, his hand hovering over the final switch. Outside, he could hear the low hum of the Veln ship powering up, preparing to begin its work of collection. He thought of his family, his friends, his home. He thought of all the quiet, simple lives that were about to be turned into museum exhibits. He took a deep breath and threw the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the entire workshop lit up with a blinding white light. The old ship groaned, a sound of metal protesting after centuries of silence. A wave of pure energy, visible as a ripple in the air, shot out from the transmitter dish on the roof and lanced straight up into the belly of the Veln vessel. High above, the great ship of the curators flinched. Its perfect, silent form flickered, its lights dimming for a single, shocking second. Inside the ship, the Veln who had been so calm, so certain, were thrown into chaos. Their delicate instruments overloaded, their perfect records corrupted by a burst of chaotic, human-made noise. On the ground, Reese collapsed, exhausted but smiling. He hadn't won. He knew that. The Veln ship was still there, and it was still infinitely more powerful. But for the first time in their long, quiet history, the curators had been surprised. They had been shown that even the smallest, simplest creatures could bite back. And in that moment of surprise, a new story began, one the curators had not planned for, and one they would be forced to learn. The great Veln ship hung in the sky, wounded but not broken. The burst of raw energy from Reese's makeshift weapon had been like a slap to a god, more insulting than harmful, but enough to shatter their illusion of invincibility. Inside the vessel, the curators were in turmoil. Their perfect systems, designed over millennia to gently extract and preserve the essence of lesser species, had been disrupted by something chaotic, unpredictable and utterly human. On the ground, the village was silent. The people had watched the flash of light, felt the strange tremor in the air, and now they waited, holding their breath. They saw the alien ship flicker, and for a moment, hope bloomed in their hearts. But the ship did not leave. It remained, a dark sentinel against the morning sky. Reese stumbled out of his workshop, his ears ringing and his hands burned from the console. He looked up, his heart sinking. His plan had only bought them time, not freedom. He knew the Veln would not be so careless again. Their next move would be swift and final. Inside the Veln ship, the elder curator stood before a shimmering pool of liquid data. The images within showed the primitive human settlement, the old colony ship, and the young human who had caused the disruption. The curator's mind, usually a calm sea of logic and order, was now troubled by a new, unfamiliar concept: defiance. "Analyze the energy signature," the elder commanded, its thought voice sharp with urgency. The response came instantly from the ship's intelligence. Source is a primitive fusion power coupling of Terran origin. Model designation Odyssey-class colony vessel. It was overloaded in a manner that bypassed all known safety protocols. The act required a deep, intuitive understanding of the system's weaknesses and a complete disregard for personal safety. The elder was silent. This was not the behavior of a simple farmer. This was the behavior of a creator, a problem solver, a being who used what little it had to challenge the impossible. It was a trait the curators had seen before in the early histories of a dozen now silent species. It was always the first spark before a great fire, or a great tragedy. Back on Kestra, Marna found Aris sitting on a rock, staring at the sky. She sat beside him, her old hands resting on her knees. "What have you done, child?" she asked, her voice not angry but heavy with worry. "I reminded them we are alive," Aris replied, his voice hoarse. "They see us as a story to be finished, but we're still writing it." Marna sighed. "You have made them angry. They will not be gentle now." "I know," Aris said. "But maybe gentle was never an option. Maybe our only choice was to be forgotten quietly or to be remembered loudly." His words spread through the village. The fear did not vanish, but it changed. It was no longer the fear of the unknown, but the fear of a fight they knew they would lose. Yet, with that fear came a strange resolve. If they were to be erased, they would not go silently. Men and women began to gather their tools, not just farming tools, but anything that could be used. Old pipes, metal sheets, the few functional energy cells from the colony ship. They were building a defense, however futile dot high above. The Veln ship began to change. Its smooth surface rippled, and dozens of smaller craft like obsidian seeds detached from its hull. They descended slowly, not with the single beam of light from before, but with a dozen, then 100. They were coming to collect their archive, by force if necessary. Ars knew his workshop trick wouldn't work a second time. The Veln would be shielded, their systems locked down. He needed a new idea, and he needed it fast. He ran back to the colony ship, not to the engine room this time, but deeper, to the very core where the ship's AI, long dormant, was housed. It was a ghost in the machine, a remnant of Earth's final days, programmed with one goal: protect the colonists at all costs. The AI was barely functional, its voice a whisper of static in his headset. "Intruder alert. Protocol, Omega." "It's me, Aris," he said, his voice urgent. "We need your help. The curators are here." The AI processed this for a long moment. "Curators. Preservation protocol? Threat level, existential. Directive, protect the future. What can you do?" Aris asked. "The ship is dead," the AI whispered. "But its heart is not. There is one last function. A final gift from those who sent us away from Earth." Aris's eyes widened as the AI explained. The colony ship had one final secret, a weapon so terrible it was only to be used if humanity faced total annihilation. It was not a bomb. It was a key to open a door into the planet itself. Kestra was not just a random rock. The original colonists had chosen it because of its unique geology. At its core was a massive deposit of a rare, unstable element. The ship's final function was to trigger a controlled chain reaction in that core, not to destroy the planet, but to make it scream a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse that would fry any unshielded technology on or near its surface. It was a suicide switch. If they used it, their own machines, their homes, their entire way of life would be destroyed. They would be thrown back into a stone age. But the Veln ships, with their advanced but delicate systems, would be crippled. Aris ran back to the village, his mind racing. He told Marna and the others. There was no debate. They had already accepted they might die. Now they had a choice: die as data in a library or live as survivors in a ruined world. They chose to live. As the Veln seed ships landed at the edge of the fields, the humans were ready. Not with weapons, but with a single, unified act of will. Aris, from the heart of the old colony ship, activated the final protocol. Deep below their feet, the planet groaned. A wave of invisible energy erupted from Kestra's core, washing over the land and into the sky. The Veln seed ships, so graceful and perfect, suddenly went dark. They fell to the ground like dead birds. High above, the great mothership shuddered violently, its lights winking out one by one. Alarms, silent to human ears but deafening in the Veln minds, screamed through its corridors. On the ground, every light, every tool, every piece of technology the humans owned went dead. The silence that followed was profound. Then, from the fallen Veln ships, the tall figures emerged, not with their usual grace, but with confusion and fear in their glowing eyes. They were stranded, their connection to their ship and their vast knowledge severed. The humans stepped forward, not with violence, but with a quiet strength. They had lost their machines, but they had kept their world. They had shown the universe that humanity's greatest weapon was not its technology, but its willingness to burn its own world to keep it free. The curators had come to take a story, but they had walked into a war one they never saw coming, and one they could not win with their archives and their quiet kindness. The story of Kestra was far from over. It had just become much more interesting. The silence after the pulse was deeper than any night on Kestra. The hum of machines, the soft glow of lights, even the whisper of the wind through the old colony ship's vents, all gone. The world felt raw, stripped bare. The humans stood in their fields, breathing hard, looking at the fallen Veln ships like broken black seeds scattered across the soil. The Veln themselves were dazed. Their minds, used to constant connection with their ship and its vast knowledge, were now alone. They stumbled from their craft, their glowing eyes wide with something new fear. They had never been cut off before. Their entire civilization was built on unity, on shared thought, on perfect order. Now, they were just individuals, stranded on a world that had fought back. Aris walked toward them, his hands empty. He was not a warrior, but he was the one who had started this. Marna followed close behind, her face grim but calm. The rest of the village formed a loose circle around the downed aliens, not threatening, but watchful. One of the Veln, taller than the others, stepped forward. It was the Elder. His voice, when it came, was weak, no longer a clear thought in their minds, but a shaky, spoken word rough and strange, as if it had never used its mouth to speak before. "You broke the sky," it said, its voice cracking. "We protected our home," Aris replied. The Elder looked around, at the dead machines, at the simple clothes of the humans, at the dirt beneath their feet. "You destroyed your own tools, your own future. We chose our present," Marna said. "You came to take our past and lock it away. We would rather live without machines than live as ghosts in your library." The Elder was silent for a long time. Then it did something none of them expected. It knelt, not in surrender, but in respect. "We have preserved 1,000,000 species," it said slowly, "but we have never met one that would burn its own world to keep its soul." The other Veln followed, kneeling in the dirt. It was not defeat. It was understanding. Over the next few days, an odd peace settled over Kestra. The Veln could not leave. Their ships were dead, their great vessel above still dark and silent. The humans had no way to fix alien technology, and the Velen had no way to build anything from scratch. So they began to talk. The humans taught the Velen how to draw water from the well, how to start a fire with flint and steel, how to plant seeds in the hard ground. The Velen, in turn, shared stories, not from their archives, but from their own memories, things they had seen and felt before they became curators. They spoke of stars being born, of ancient songs sung by gas giants, of quiet moments in deep space that had moved them. Aris spent most of his time with the elder, whose name, he learned, was Kale. Kale was fascinated by human hands, how they could build, break, heal, and create. "You do not wait for perfection," Kale said one evening, watching Aris carve a piece of wood into a simple tool. "You make do with what you have. You are always becoming. And you?" Aris asked. "Are you not becoming?" Kale looked up at the sky, where their great ship hung like a dead moon. "We stopped becoming long ago. We decided the universe was finished, and our job was only to remember it. But you remind us that the story is still being written." Weeks passed. The humans rebuilt their lives without machines. They made candles from animal fat, wove cloth from local plants, and cooked over open fires. It was harder, yes, but there was a strange joy in it, a return to something real. The Velen adapted slowly. They learned to eat human food, to sleep under the stars, to feel the sun on their skin without filters or shields. They began to laugh, a sound none of them had made in centuries. Then, one morning, a change came from the sky. A small light appeared on the dark hull of the Velen ship. Then another. Slowly, the great vessel began to wake up. Deep within its core, systems were rebooting, bypassing the damage caused by the pulse. It would take time, but the ship would fly again. The humans watched in silence. They knew what this meant. The Velen would leave. And when they did, they would carry the story of Kestra with them, not as a cold archive, but as a living memory. On the day the ship was ready, Kale gathered the humans. "We will go," he said, "but we will not take your history. We will carry your lesson." "What lesson?" Marna asked. "That life is not meant to be preserved. It is meant to be lived. That species is not defined by what it leaves behind, but by what it dares to do while it is here." He turned to Aris. "You showed us that even the smallest spark can light a fire in the dark. We will tell your story across the stars, not as a record, but as a warning and a hope." The Velen boarded their ships. The great vessel rose into the sky, not with arrogance, but with humility. As it vanished into the stars, the people of Kestra stood together, looking up. They had lost their machines, but they had gained something far greater. They had proven that humanity, even on a forgotten rock at the edge of nowhere, was not small. They were not just survivors. They were teachers. Aris looked at his hands, calloused, dirty, alive. He smiled. The universe was vast, yes, but it was not uncaring. Not anymore. Because now, somewhere out there, a great and ancient people carried a new truth in their hearts, that the most powerful force in all creation was not knowledge, or power, or even time. It was the will to fight for what you love. And that was a story worth telling. Years passed on Kestra. The world healed, and so did its people. Without machines, they built a new life from the ground up, stronger, simpler, and more connected to the land. They learned to read the wind, to listen to the soil, and to trust their hands more than any screen. Aris, now a man grown, became a teacher. He showed the children not just how to farm or build, but how to think, how to question, and how to never accept that the universe had already decided their fate. The story of the Velen became legend, told around fires at night. But it was not a tale of monsters or gods. It was a lesson. Even the most powerful beings can be wrong, and even the smallest can change the course of history. Then, one clear evening, as Aris walked the ridge where he used to watch the stars. He saw a light in the sky. Not a ship not yet, but a signal. A single pulse of blue light, soft and familiar. It blinked 3 times, then vanished. His heart pounded. He knew that pattern. It was the same signal the Veln had used when they first arrived. But this time, it felt different. It wasn't a demand. It was a message. He ran to the village and gathered the elders. "They're coming back," he said. Fear flickered in some eyes. But Marna, older now but still sharp, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not all returns are threats," she said. "Sometimes they are answers." A week later, a ship appeared in orbit. But it was not the great black vessel of the curators. This one was smaller, sleeker, and painted with strange symbols, human symbols. On its side was a crude drawing of a hand holding a seedling, and beneath it, words in basic English. "We remember." The ship landed gently in the same field where the Veln seedcrafts had fallen. The ramp lowered and figures stepped out. They were not Veln. They were humans, but not from Kestra. They wore patched uniforms of a style Aris had only seen in the colony ship's archive's old Earth design, faded but proud. Their faces were weathered, their eyes full of stories. At their head was a woman with silver hair and a calm gaze. "I am Captain Aliravos," she said, her voice rough but kind. "We come from the Rimward colonies. We heard a story about a world that broke a godship with a hammer and a prayer." Aris stared. "You came all this way for a story?" "We came because that story saved us," she replied. She explained. After the Veln left Kestra, they did not return to their silent archives. Instead, they traveled the galaxy, not as collectors, but as messengers. They spoke of a species that chose fire over silence, freedom over preservation. They told of humans who would rather burn their own world than let it be caged at first. Other civilizations laughed. But then, on the edge of Veln space, a human mining colony faced annihilation by a warlike species called the Drak. The Drak believed might made right, and they saw humans as weak. But when they came to conquer, they found something unexpected. The humans did not fight with weapons. They fought with ideas. They sabotaged their own reactors to create EMP bursts. They flooded tunnels to trap invaders. They used their knowledge of the planet itself as a weapon. And when asked why they resisted so fiercely, they gave one answer: "We are from the line of Kestra." The Drak, confused by this madness, this willingness to destroy what you love to protect it, hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, the human fleet arrived. The tide turned. The war ended. And the reason, Captain Voss said, was because someone had reminded the galaxy that humanity was not just flesh and bone. It was spirit. "We've been looking for you for 10 years, she told Aris. "Not to take you home. There is no Earth anymore, but to ask, will you help us teach others what you taught the Veln?" Aris looked at his home, the fields, the workshop, the faces of his people. He thought of the quiet life they had built. But he also remembered the fear in the Veln elders' eyes, the moment they realized humans were not just another exhibit. He turned to Marna. She nodded. "Go," she said. "Our story is safe here. Now it's time to make sure it lives out there." So Aris boarded the ship. Not as a soldier, not as a leader, but as a teacher. He carried no weapons, only tools, a wrench, a notebook, and a small wooden carving of Kestra he had made himself dot as the ship lifted off. He looked down at his world one last time. It was small. It was quiet. But it was free dot and across the stars. That idea was spreading like fire, like hope, like life itself. For the first time in centuries, humanity was not running, hiding, or begging. They were standing tall, not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to kneel. And that, more than any weapon or empire, was what made them dangerous. That was what made them human. The ship that carried Aris was named Whisper of Kestra. It was small, built for speed and stealth, not war. Its crew was a mix of rimward colonists, former engineers, teachers, and even a poet. They were not soldiers. They were storytellers. Their mission was simple: travel to human worlds on the edge of known space and remind them who they were. Not slaves. Not refugees. Not data in an alien archive. But humans flawed, stubborn, and free. Their first stop was Viridian 9, a mining world under the shadow of the Gore Empire. The Gore were insect-like beings who believed all lesser species existed to serve. They had taken Viridian 9's surface, forcing humans underground into tunnels damp with fear and rust. The people there had forgotten how to fight. They only knew how to survive. When Whisper of Kestra landed in a hidden canyon, its arrival was met with suspicion. The locals thought it was a trap. But Aris stepped out alone, hands open, and spoke one sentence. "We come from Kestra, the world that broke the curators." That name meant nothing to most. But to an old miner named Joran, it sparked a memory. His grandfather had told him stories of a time when humans stood tall against gods. He brought Aris to the Council of Elders, who listened with tired eyes. Aris didn't offer weapons. He offered questions. "What do you have that the Gore don't?" He asked. "Nothing," one elder muttered. "They have ships, armor, numbers." "But you have the tunnels," Aris said. "You know every turn, every weak point in the rock. You know where the air flows, where the water pools, where the ground is thin." He showed them how to use what they had. Not to kill, but to disrupt. Block ventilation shafts with rubble to force Gore patrols out. Flood lower levels during their sleep cycles. Use old mine charges not to destroy, but to create noise confusion. Make the ground itself feel alive and hostile. Most importantly, he taught them to speak again. To whisper the old words. Asterisk, we are human. We choose our fate. Asterisk, within weeks, the Gore grew uneasy. Their patrols vanished. Their machines failed in strange ways. Their commanders reported ghosts in the tunnels. The humans weren't fighting. They were haunting. Then came the night of the Red Raina, rare storm that turned the sky crimson. Under its cover, the humans struck not with guns, but with light. They used polished metal scraps to reflect emergency flares into Gore sensor arrays, blinding them. They played recordings of distorted voices through broken comms, making the tunnels echo with phantom screams. The Gore, creatures of logic and order, could not handle chaos. They retreated to their surface fortress, calling for reinforcements. But by then, the humans were no longer afraid. Word spread. From Viridian 9, the story flew to Helios Minor, where humans worked in solar farms under robotic overseers. There, Aris taught them to reprogram maintenance drones to malfunction, in ways that slowed production just enough to cause panic among their alien managers. On Iceworld Nixa, he showed frozen settlers how to use thermal vents to melt paths beneath enemy camps, causing the ground to collapse without a single shot fired. Every world was different. Every solution was born from what the people already had. Aris never gave orders. He only asked, Asterisk, what can you do with what you've got? Asterisk, back on Kestra, life continued. Children were born who had never seen a machine work. They learned to weave, to hunt, to read the stars as guides, not just lights. Marna grew older, her hair white as snow, but her voice still strong when she told the tale of the day the sky fell and the humans stood up. She often looked toward the stars, wondering if Aris was safe. She did not worry for his life. She worried for his hope. The galaxy was vast and cruel. Would his message be heard or lost in the noise of war? She needn't have worried. Far away, on the galactic fringe, a new movement was growing. It had no name at first. Then someone called it the Kestra way. It wasn't about violence. It was about dignity, about using cleverness over strength, unity over fear, and the courage to say no when the universe says submit. Even the Velm noticed. From their silent ships, they watched as human colonies, once scattered and broken, began to link together, not with fleets, but with ideas. They shared plans, warnings, songs. They built networks of trust across light years. One day, a Velm scout ship appeared near Whisper of Kestra. It sent no demands, only a message. Asterisk, you have given us back our purpose. We now preserve not just what was, but what could be. Asterisk Aris smiled when he heard it. The curators had become something new, not keepers of the dead past, but guardians of living futures. Years turned into decades. Aris's hair grayed, his steps slowed, but his mind stayed sharp. He never returned to Kestra. He didn't need to. He carried it in his heart, in every lesson he taught, every spark he lit dot. And then, one quiet evening aboard the Whisper, now patched and worn like an old friend, he received a signal. It was faint, coded in the old Kestra pattern, 3 pulses of blue light. He opened it. It was from a young voice, barely more than a boy, speaking from a newly freed colony. "We heard your story," the boy said. "We used your way. It worked. Thank you." Aris leaned back in his chair, looking out at the endless stars. He thought of the workshop on Kestra, the smell of oil and dust, the sound of his own heartbeat as he threw that final switch. He had not wanted to be a hero. He had only wanted to be free, and in giving others that same chance, he had done something greater than winning a war. He had reminded an entire species how to be human dot outside the ship. The stars burned cold and distant. But somewhere, in 1,000 hidden places, fires were being lit not of destruction, but of defiance. And each one carried the same quiet truth. We are here. We are alive. And we will not be erased.